A cardboard box the color of old parchment arrived at the Boston newsroom on a drizzly Friday in March. No return address, only a smudged fingerprint and a single sentence printed in courier type. Play the tape, follow the crumbs. Inside lay a battered Sony Walkman, a 1995 high school yearbook, and four thick bundles of letters stamped Federal Prison, Cumberland, MD. An editor popped in the cassette. The wheels whirred, and a woman's tremulous voice filled the room. If you're listening, please believe we were more than a headline. I still bake peach pies every Labor Day. That voice belonged to Emily Walker, a pastry chef turned recluse whose life collided with one of the strangest jailbreak sagas New England has ever hushed up. The letters came from Ethan Hayes, the man who had once been her husband, later her captor, and finally, against every odd, her home. Emily was born in 1981 in the fishing town of Gloucester, Massachusetts. She left college after an unexpected pregnancy and, desperate for stability, joined a discreet matchmaking charity that paired single mothers with men willing to shoulder instant fatherhood. At a summer fundraiser, she met Ethan Hayes, a shy, square-shouldered former Coast Guard sailor studying diesel engines for lobster boats. He bought her lemonade, she lent him a hair tie when sea wind whipped his bangs into his eyes, and 2 months later they exchanged vows beneath a paper flower arch behind St. Mary's. Their first dance was to a portable radio that kept losing signal. Henry was born under the crackle of 4th of July fireworks. Ethan sobbed with delirious joy and told the nurse he had caught a tailwind straight into heaven. Yet within 4 years, the marriage curdled. Emily's postpartum blues slid into chronic depression, and Instagram's perfect mom fantasies only sharpened her self-loathing. Ethan worked swing shifts at a boatyard. Emily began selling cosmetics at Manhattan networking parties and inevitably met Derek Slater, a silk-tongued real estate broker who praised her brilliance while pouring her overpriced Cabernet. One icy November night, Ethan found two first-class Asila tickets in Emily's purse, both dated for the same weekend. He tailed her GPS signal down to Soho and watched, gut-twisted, as she kissed Derek under a flickering street lamp. The confrontation erupted in their kitchen an hour later. Accusations, shattered glass, Henry crying upstairs. Emily's laugh, edged with scorn, pushed Ethan over a line neither had known existed. He shoved her. Her temple met the granite counter with a sickening thud, and an overturned candle lit the napkin pile aflame. The smoke alarms wailed. By the time firefighters dragged Ethan and a soot-streaked Henry out, Emily lay still beneath a sheet. A jury weighed grief and panic against negligence and labeled the tragedy involuntary manslaughter. Ethan received 18 years plus 4 more for reckless endangerment by fire. Prison changed him slowly. He ran the library, memorized Moby Dick, picked up sketching so he could send Henry drawings of whales breaching beneath citron moons, though his in-laws intercepted every envelope. Guilt gnawed so deep he barely slept. On August 29, 2019, Hurricane Dorian lashed the Atlantic, knocking out reserve power at Walpole Correctional. Ethan, hospitalized that week for appendicitis, noticed two guards streaming the storm on TikTok. He yanked an IV pole loose, slipped past the bathroom grate, and dove from a second-story window onto a trash compactor. Glass sliced a trench in his thigh, but he limped into the tempest and vanished. By dawn, the Massachusetts State Police had plastered his mugshot across every screen. They called him armed, dangerous, and cornered by his own blood loss. 100 miles north, in the pine-smothered hamlet of Holbrook, Emily, now 38, living under her maiden name Walker, was stopping at the Maple 24 convenience store with 13-year-old Henry to grab shredded cheese. The main highway was blocked by a lightning-snapped telephone pole. Maple 24 was a detour they'd never normally take. At 6:42 a.m., Ethan, soaked and trembling, slipped through the stockroom door seeking bandages. Emily and Henry entered 30 seconds later, arguing over cheddar versus Monterey Jack. Ethan recognized Emily instantly. Grief collided with shock and survival instinct. He pressed a paring knife, more handle than blade, against Henry's shoulder and rasped, "Keys, just drive us out. Your son lives if you do." The terror in his own voice sounded foreign. Emily saw the crimson bloom on his jeans, heard the catch in his breath. A medic's ear never forgets, and chose a gamble no sane parent should. She guided Henry toward the Bronco, tossed Ethan the passenger side towel to staunch the bleeding, then turned opposite the interstate and threaded deep into Pine Creek Forest, straight to her cedar bungalow where cell service died every winter. She bolted the doors, warned Henry not to touch the landline, and stitched Ethan's wound by flashlight with fishing lines sterilized in bourbon. All night, the radio crackled bulletins. Male, 6 feet, brown hair, considered extremely perilous. Ethan, feverish, mumbled, 48 hours, then I'm smoke. Emily replied, 48 hours, you're alive. After that, we'll see. Morning smelled of pine smoke and leaking radiator fluid. Emily baked a peach pie to calm her nerves, the first dessert she dared make since the trial. The aroma jolted Ethan awake. He limped into the kitchen, stared as if through time. You still cut the vents in the crust like little whale tails, he whispered. Emily's whisk paused. Henry, clutching a baseball glove like a shield, watched the exchange and suddenly knew. This stranger was the father headlines claimed had killed him and his mother. Hearts slammed in 3 chests, but no one spoke the thought aloud. Later, a knock rattled the doorframe. Patricia Delaney, widowed neighbor, rolled in her wheelchair-bound son and begged Emily to babysit while she battled insurance in town. The TV on low volume looped CNN's Manhunt special. Ethan's face filled the screen. Emily hissed at Patricia's boy to look away, but children notice everything. When Ethan wheeled him onto the porch to distract him with bird calls, the boy craned up and whispered, "You're the lost whale, aren't you?" Ethan sighed, "Only until someone plays the right song." The child offered a pinky promise of silence. That night, snow knifed the clapboards. Emily poured hot cocoa. Ethan told Henry stories of celestial navigation, how a sailor finds home by trusting stars that died millennia ago. Emily cried without warning. Ethan brushed tears off her cheek. They kissed, tasting salt and cocoa on each other's lips, while Henry lay awake upstairs, equal parts fury and hope. Plans took shape at dawn. Scrap together every dollar, race north to Bangor, Maine, buy 3 ferry tickets to Canada before patrol dogs could sniff fresh blood. At the bank, Emily fumbled answers about the massive withdrawal until Henry cracked a grin and chirped, "We're buying an RV to conquer Route 66. The teller laughed and counted out 38 grand. That same hour, Deputy Briggs and suspicion magnet Patricia returned to Pine Creek. Briggs glimpsed a man's work boots behind the curtain and noted the detail in his ledger. Ethan saw the inevitable writ across Briggs's eyes. That evening, he pulled rope from the shed, looped it gently around Emily's wrists and Henry's ankles, enough to bruise the skin for a detective's camera, not enough to hurt. "You need proof I forced you," he said. "Truth is heavier than rope." Henry sobbed that he didn't want another father he had to lose. Ethan kissed the boy's forehead and murmured, "You're strong because you forgive what the world calls unforgivable." Blue lights cut the night. Bullhorns thundered. Ethan Hayes, exit unarmed. He stepped onto the porch, deck winter wind folding prison scrubs tight against fresh stitches, and surrendered. Snowflakes hissed on hot headlights, tackle snapsh like punctuation. Ethan took 25 more years for escape and kidnapping. Emily sold the cabin, moved to Salem, and turned her grief into sugar and spice. Peach and Glory, an online pie shop marketed as the flavor of second chances. Henry pitched on Boston College's baseball team until a torn rotator cuff ended the dream. He returned to co-run the bakery and turned its tiny kitchen into a lab for nitro coffee and gelato. Meanwhile, Ethan, inmate number 472-861, built ukuleles from pallet wood, donated them to Maine's public school music programs, and taught 40 felons the math of harmony. In May 2034, a warden handed him a glossy food magazine cover. Henry in a flour-dusted apron, Emily behind him wielding a rolling pin like a scepter. Peach pies framed them both. Beneath the photo, an article headline read, "Salem's Sweetest Redemption." Ethan felt the floor sway as though he were back on a pitching deck. The parole board granted supervised release for June 15th. 2 weeks later, he mailed a letter. "If your mother remains alone, may I write her once? I would sooner burn my hands than bruise her heart again." Henry drove overnight to Holbrook, found the old refrigerator still humming in the abandoned cabin. On the top shelf sat a single slice of peach pie, wrapped in waxed paper and dated Labor Day each year. Ethan had been gone. At dawn, mother and son waited outside Cumberland Federal. Ethan emerged, hair silvered, eyes still harbor blue, and halted at the sight of Emily holding a fresh pie tin, steam curling into the cool air. No one spoke. Their embrace said the rest. They rewired an Airstream trailer into a roaming bake shop, parked it on Salem Wharf. Tourists queued for slices of runaway peach for coffee Henry brewed and stories Emily told. A kitchen accident that rewrote 3 lives, a snowstorm that forged a family, a rope too gentle to leave scars, yet strong enough to anchor truth. Wall panels inside the trailer carry scraps of colored paper where customers confess regrets, affairs, estranged siblings, unpaid debts, then drop them into a copper cauldron by the register. Every month, Ethan burns the notes and scatters the ash in a community garden planted with white blossom peach trees, a variety called Belle of Georgia that bears sweeter fruit after frost damage. Podcast producers turned the letters and tapes into a 6-episode sensation. Millions streamed it. Yet the trio at Peach and Glory remained stubbornly ordinary, measuring cinnamon, restringing ukuleles, paying taxes on time. Emily likes to say the pies taste best when you eat them warm enough to risk a burn, reminding the tongue that healing follows pain. Ethan prefers simpler words. The oven doesn't care what you did yesterday, it only asks if you're willing to stand the heat today. Some stories end with prison doors clanging shut, others with wedding bells. This one ends and keeps beginning, each time a stranger bites into pastry and realizes forgiveness can be flaky, sticky, imperfect, but still the sweetest thing under a bitter sky.